Carrie appears to be a normal suburban girl on the outside, yet is anything but on the inside. Her mother, Margaret, is disturbingly religious and believes Carrie to be born of sin since she had her before marriage and almost terminated her. At home, Margaret becomes the overbearing mother to Carrie and always guiding her back to the path of Christ through abusive means. At school, Carrie's life isn't much better, where she's having trouble fitting in and is constantly bullied for being strange and different. Since she was raised conservatively, she didn't know what's happening when she got her first period and started panicking, thinking she's dying. The girls tried to help her at first, but ended up making fun of her. One of the girls, Chris, started filming Carrie as she struggled to seek help from them. Then they all started tossing tampons at her until their homeroom teacher, Ms. Desjardins, stepped in. She had to slap Carrie to get her to stop her mental breakdown. They met up with the principal to discuss what happened, and through sheer impulse, Carrie accidentally broke the water cooler. Margaret came to pick her up and took her straight home, where she drills down the Lord's gospel into Carrie. But even that wasn't enough, so she locks her up in the closet so she can pray for forgiveness. Carrie's distress caused her to crack the door and produce hallucinations, and all the while her mother thinking it's the devil's work. Earlier, Chris is showing her boyfriend, George, the video of them tormenting Carrie. Sue looked deeply remorseful and later tells her boyfriend, Tommy, about it. Tommy was sympathetic but tells Sue that she should have personally apologized to Carrie. Meanwhile, Chris thought it would be a great idea to upload Carrie's video to the internet. The next day, the video has spread on the internet, and so Ms. Desjardins decided to punish everyone involved in the incident. Chris protested, but the teacher threatened suspension if they don't comply. Then they won't be able to go to prom, which is a huge deal for them. So they all did the laps, but Chris couldn't take it anymore and stopped and verbally abused the teacher. She got suspended, but Chris tries to rally everyone else to resist Ms. Desjardins, but no one took her side anymore. Not even her best friend Sue. Of course, Chris tries to have her suspension revoked and even brought her corporate dad to help out. Her father downplayed what she did and demanded the suspension dropped, claiming they don't have proof. Ms. Desjardins, however, told him of the video's existence and hinted on how it will destroy his reputation and everyone involved if this video is reported to the TV stations. Chris' father demanded she hand over her phone to prove she's innocent, that she didn't take the video but she stormed out instead. She headed straight to the gymnasium to tell Sue that she's officially out of prom and threatened everyone to watch their backs. Carrie's school life has worsened because of the video. At the bathroom, she breaks the mirror using her powers and even moved the broken pieces around. She got excited and decides to look more into her newfound telekinetic powers. Later at class, she was called up front to read her choice of poem, but the teacher insulted her. Surprisingly, Tommy jumped to her defense and even praised her work. Carrie's powers are increasing each passing day, and she's slowly learning how to control it. She still hides this from her mother for fear of religious punishment. Sue's guilt increases each passing day. She took a drastic step and informs Tommy that she won't be going to prom and to ask Carrie instead. Tommy hesitated, but Sue was dead serious, so later that afternoon, he approached Carrie to get some small talk going and to ask her to prom. Now Tommy is this famous lacrosse jock who is liked by everyone and is actually a genuinely nice guy, but Carrie still didn't take it well and assumed it was all a prank. Ms. Desjardins found her crying alone, and Carrie tells her what happened. The teacher assures her that she deserves to be taken to prom and shows her how beautiful she can be. Afterwards, she confronts Tommy and Sue, but they both insist that their intentions are good and they're not messing with Carrie. Tommy tries asking her out again later, and Carrie, fearing that her mother might come home soon, eventually says yes. Carrie is excited on having a prom date and goes out to shop for dresses. Chris and her clique is stalking her from afar like vultures. Carrie returns home late and finds her mother waiting impatiently. Margaret was mad but got even more furious when Carrie tells her she's going to prom. Carrie tells her that Tommy is a nice boy and that she just wanted to be accepted in school. Her mother tells her all boys are evil and started projecting her own bad experience with boys to Carrie. Margaret is going to shove Carrie back into the prayer closet, but she's had enough. Her mother started praying when Carrie made her stand up. Margaret calls her a witch, but Carrie explained that her powers were hereditary and was passed on from her grandmother, then to Carrie's father. Her mother tells Carrie that her father gave her cancer and that Carrie is the cancer. She eventually lets go of her mother, who collapsed and continued praying. And so Carrie carried on in making her prom dress, while Sue is also busy helping out with the decorations. But she suddenly felt nauseated and had to puke in the bathroom. Meanwhile, Chris and George have a horrible scheme of their own. In a pig farm somewhere, they look for a pig to slaughter. George's buddy tried to do it but chickened out, so George had to do it himself. Chris ended up finishing the pig and they all collect the blood. The gang then break into the gymnasium to prepare their trap. Carrie finished her dress and it is gorgeous. Margaret still won't give her daughter her blessing and tells her Tommy won't show up and to just give up. But Tommy did show up, and does it with style. So Margaret continued on with her religious damnation preaching, so Carrie had no choice but to forcefully shut her up. And locked and sealed her up in the prayer closet. Tommy was amazed when he sees Carrie and they went together to prom. Tommy was an absolute gentleman and was extremely considerate to Carrie's feelings. However, Carrie is getting this uneasy feeling that something is up. As the rest of the students dance and have fun, Ms. Desjardins spots them and says hi. Tommy lets Sue know that everything's okay. When he comes back, he takes Carrie's hand and showed her how to dance, and she is openly smitten and having a great time. Then comes the announcement for the homecoming king and queen. Chris and George were let in and headed to their positions. Everybody makes a vote and Tommy convinces Carrie to be brave and vote for themselves, to which she did. But all their votes are for nothing as Chris' friends rigged the results. And Chris couldn't help but give Sue a hint of what's about to happen. Sue rushes out and makes it to the school just in time for Tommy and Carrie to be chosen as the homecoming king and queen. As they both walk to the stage and get into positions, Sue spots Chris and tries to warn them, but Ms. Desjardins takes her out of school thinking that she's planning to sabotage the coronation. Chris pulls the cord and drenches Carrie in blood. And if that's not enough, they also play the video of Carrie from earlier. George and Chris make a getaway while Tommy stood helpless. Unfortunately, George didn't tie the rope properly and it came loose and the bucket hit Tommy, killing him instantly. Carrie is devastated by his death and sees George's sunglasses and immediately realized who's responsible. With nothing left to lose, Carrie unleashes her full power. She locks everyone in and completely becomes the goddess of death and destruction, an awesome mistress of massacre. Everyone who made fun of and bullied Carrie learned the true meaning of fuck around and find out. And Carrie doesn't give a shit in making this into a TikTok video. She made an exception for Ms. Desjardins, but everyone else can burn. She levitates out of school and spots Chris driving away. While the car is stuck at the lights, Chris texts her daddy. Carrie catches them and cuts off their escape. As they turn around and see her, Chris pushes George to run down Carrie. But his car was no match for the supernatural. Now Chris is left on her own, with no Daddy or George to bail her out of her mess. Yet Chris isn't about to give up as she revs up the car one more time. Carrie lifts the car up and releases it to run over a gas station. She walks all the way back home and finds that her mother had escaped the closet. She tries to find her but can't, so she decides to wash off all the filth instead. The realization of what she's done hitting her like a ton of bricks. She finds Margaret eventually, and Carrie begs for forgiveness and admits her mother was right all along. Everyone did laugh at her. But her mother was already blinded by her twisted faith and did what she said she should have done all those years ago. Carrie escapes Margaret, but she was relentless, so Carrie has no choice but to use her powers. Sue arrives to beg for forgiveness just as Margaret passes away. Unable to control her powers any longer, Sue tries to help Carrie, where she tells her that she's going to have a baby girl. Carrie saves Sue before burying herself and her mother. After the funeral, Sue visits Carrie's grave but suddenly felt herself ready to give birth. While she's going into labor, strange things start happening around them. Sue looks down as a hand suddenly shoots up and grabs her. She goes wild, but it was just a nightmare all along. And that's the end of our story. Carrie lived a very sad existence all her life, where she's cruelly bullied by her classmates and also by her family. Had Margaret been more of a caring mother instead of some religious head case, and also her classmates kinder and more supportive, Carrie would have used her powers for good. Carrie was mature enough to recognize and to call out the errors in her mother's ways, and she was also patient and kind. But the loss of Tommy brought her to and over the edge. I couldn't help but think how things might have been different. Let us know in the comments on what you think, and if you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and subscribe. Thank you, and we'll see you at the next one.